Welcome to Stories from the Standing Room. Join us for tales of history, phantoms, folklore, ghost stories, mysterious happenings, and more. A playful and fun weekly podcast with a
British husband and his American wife.
Join us from inside our 450-year-old home in the English countryside.
For journeys into the past, the arcane, and the downright spooky.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 15 of Stories from the Standing Room. Hello, husband.
Hello, wife.
We're doing something different this time.
We are. It's strange.
It's kind of weird. Yeah. Well, we're doing this because of the audio element. Is we're having stories submitted via MP3, via smartphones, and coming in electronically. So in order for us to have more control over the audio, since we are a podcast, is we're going full podcast.
Yeah, just to see how this one works.
Full-blown podcast. How does it feel?
Just feels different.
It does.
Feels strange. I'm used to being watched.
You can't see any cat's bottoms.
Yeah. Well, that is a saving grace of doing it this way.
Well, I do want to say for our Facebook Live audience, now you're actually at the show. So we've been practicing with you for 14 weeks, and we appreciate you. And so now you're getting the polished edition of episode 15.
Yes.
And,
woo.
Woo?
I was just saying, without the pleasure of having to watch Brock or any of the other cats.
Or Wiki, yes.
Wiki,
any of that.
the drama of it all.
They're still around, though.
Oh, see, he's here. What
Yeah.
has he done now?
He is. He knows it's showtime. Today, our episode is about, we're going to do graveyards, cemeteries, churchyards, ghosts and legends of burial sites. Yes?
Yeah.
And as the usual norm, we're going to go ahead and thank our SoundCloud listeners. Thank you, SoundCloud, for joining us. iTunes, want to thank our iTunes audience. YouTube, this will be the very first episode that you will not see us in the standing room, but you're going to be able to see, and as we feature some of your artwork, husband, and your favorite font as well.
Yeah.
So we have the setting. So you'll be able to look at several pictures and some of your creations while we are talking and doing the podcast. Mm-hmm. Your artwork will be featured. So that's pretty special. Yeah. Yep. So you're just chomping at the bit to get to the ghost stories. I've also got some ghost stories submitted, as I mentioned, via the write-ins as well. So we'll be doing that together. So what would you like to start off with as we ramp up to Halloween?
I think it's we do two things. We ramp up to Halloween, and also there was a point towards the end, I think, of last week's show where I mentioned the Highgate Cemetery and the legend, call it the legend, maybe the urban legend, the story, whatever, of the Highgate vampire.
Oh, well, wouldn't that be kind of where that particular setting of the 19th century vampire would have been? That was a perfect setting.
Yeah, I mean,
like
it
movie
would have
set.
been. It was a movie set. I mean, it was one of those places Bram Stoker would have been, the writer of Dracula would have been aware of. So when he was thinking of a lot of those aspects, I think, of the Gothic, it was sinking into his head.
Inspired by those mausoleums. For the podcasters who have never even heard of Highgate, which is something certainly you can Google, but can you give it a verbal description for those who've never been?
It's a large cemetery just to the, I mean, it's now within North London, but 170, 180 years ago when it was built, I think it was first opened in the 1830s, it was just north of what was then.
So it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it was on the edge of the city. Now, the thing with London at the time, it was the largest city on the planet, and it was producing a lot of bodies. People were dying. There was plague. There wasn't plague. There was cholera. There were a load of illnesses. There were illnesses, and people were dying really quite rapidly.
Yes.
And the situation before this point, before the 1830s, was that people were buried traditionally within graveyards, churchyards, which was consecrated ground within the perimeters of a church.
Right.
But they were running out of space. So they were running out of space within the graveyard, and they were also running out of space in the crypts. Now, a lot of crypts at the time were being crammed, and there was with bodies, because there were stories of church services quite often being cut short or not able to happen because the smell of the bodies was so great that people weren't able to actually continue with the service.
Concentrate on the spiritual message.
Exactly,
Really?
because it smelt so badly. Because they were cramming the church sexton and whoever was responsible for putting the bodies in. They were cramming the bodies in. They were literally using iron bars to break up the old coffins and shove other ones in, because they were just putting them into the crypts of the old churches. Some of these being medieval, a lot of them being medieval, which meant that the space they had got to saturation point. The churches no longer had any space to bury within the consecrated ground of the church.
Because everybody wanted to be in that space, because that was hopefully going to be beneficial in their afterlife.
Yes, and at the time it was where you had to be buried. You had to be buried on consecrated ground, and consecrated ground was associated to a church.
The church.
Yes.
So why didn't they just consecrate a crap load of ground?
Well, they did later.
Outside.
So that's where we see the birth of the modern cemetery.
Cemetery and graveyard, two different things, right?
Graveyard and cemetery are different. The Romans, and previously there were cemeteries in London, but post the Romans, with the coming of the Christian church from around sort of 700 and development of London, the burials had been around the church. So what we're seeing is a need to quickly address the burial aspect of all these bodies, which was done via the opening of cemeteries, and Highgate was one of these cemeteries.
Outside, away from the church.
Just north of London, and it was opened as there was there's said to be an existing house stroke small castle on the site, and there were some grounds, so they adopted this small estate around what had been, I believe, an existing house, sometimes referred to a castle, but we know it's certainly a small house. And it was landscaped, and they literally put roads in, and I think it's over about 17 acres. It appears larger when you actually go now, because what's happened is it's become very overgrown, and I think it's worth saying that there is a major aspect, apart from the height of tombs in traditional British graveyards and cemeteries, but also the fact that you get trees. So what's happened is that it's actually become a small urban forest.
It looks like a jungle, yeah.
So it looks like a jungle covered or completely populated by thousands of graves and crypts. So you have streets of mausoleums, and off those you have acres and acres of what look like forests full of thousands of tombs, all falling over into this ivy-covered treescape.
And then London has grown to encapsulate that and grown past it.
Yes, it grew past it by about 1850, I think.
There's a big area past it. You mentioned a park. Yeah. What is past it?
Hampstead Heath.
Hampstead Heath. And what's Hampstead Heath?
Hampstead Heath is the main recreational walking area for North London. It has been for centuries. In the 18th century, it had a reputation, early 18th century, for highwaymen, but they were cleared out by the mid 18th century, really. But it is now the major recreational heath for North London. So it's where you go to just walk or swim.
Kind of like New York Central Park.
It is, but it's much more rugged. It's heathland and like woods, etc. So it's much more wild. So you're in a wild part of London, yet you're surrounded by London.
That's interesting.
And as the place where you can get, like the hill where people go to fly kites, etc. But it has got that. I think Central Park would be much more like St James's Park, Regent's Park, Central Parks. This is more rugged. It's an area of countryside which is being built around. But Highgate Cemetery is very close to here. Yes. And that's very much the area.
And even though it is surrounded by urban new buildings, it still has a lot of character, and it has a lot of legends and myth.
It is. And when we say new buildings, these buildings go from around 1750 to about 1860. So there's nothing new, absolutely new in US terms. They're newish. Yes. But it's a lot of the houses in this area are quite Gothic too. And so what you have are roads which have the graveyard, the cemetery rather, on each side, and quite high walls, sometimes maybe about 12 feet high. So you can't see into it, only when you get to the gate you can peer in. The rest of the time you're aware of the trees growing over these high walls.
It'd be the perfect place to be scared. It'd be perfect. It would be. That's why probably it has so many legends. Tell me. Well,
it's had a legend, the central legend of this tall man with very, very piercing eyes. This legend stroke ghost story first started being reported about 150 years ago, somewhere in the mid to late 1850s, of a tall man wearing a cape, a very traditional Dracula type image.
There you go.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it became known as the Highgate vampire, because it resurrected itself, if you forgive the pun, in 1969. So it's very much in the heart of swinging London with all those people living in those people living there. You've got the Beatles, the Stone and Hendrix, and all the whole thing of London in the late 60s, and everyone being completely off their heads. And one of the things also what was happening is Highgate then was, now it's closed and it's fenced off and it has a trust looking after it because it's architecturally very important. But in the late 60s, the walls are falling down and the gates have fallen off and you could enter
Perfect place to party, yeah.
So all these people are off their heads on God knows everything. We're all going up to Highgate.
Oh my God.
For like some 70s horror movie, just to have a bit of play around the tombs, or sometimes some more serious and play. There were reports and there are photographs of this. There's some quite heavy duty
the black magic
activities.
It makes sense.
And you've got kids playing, but some of the markings in the photographs show these are people that were seriously into our ancient arcane knowledge. So you have people, you have things. It was black magic within. It had obviously been planned out because there were references to Jupiter in that point of the month and things. So it wasn't kids playing about. It was seriously people that had arcane knowledge.
Well, they'd have a private space with bodies if they needed them, and they were able to have.
And they go inside the tombs too, because some of these mausoleums are quite large. And there was one where it was said to have been happening, in particular, the Black Mass, if you want to call it Black Mass. It was a large, it had marble floors, it had tombs, it had candles. It really was like a gothic
the perfect
horror
place
set.
if you're going to have a black mass.
Yes, it was really like a movie set.
Now they've got it protected now. Can you see inside those mausoleums?
You can. It's all according which ones you're, but often they have now managed to fix the doors, etc. So you can't certainly get in.
Smart.
And if you can go now via guided tours. And one of the reasons is it's architecturally sensitive. It's a wildlife area. It's lots of wildlife. It's all kind of foxes and badgers and all that kind of stuff living in there.
So this guy, this tall man,
yes.
Is he?
So if we go back to 1968, we have a lot of people, a lot of party goers, a lot of people going up there and playing and doing this stuff, as well as people who are potentially getting into much more serious aspects of black magic. At this time, there starts to be a number of sightings of this figure. Now, the caped figure was referred to as vampire because I think it was partly the vampire movies which were happening at the time. There's kind of Hammer horror, Christopher Lee type movies which were popular. And the people referred to him as being a vampire, not because there was any aspects of anyone saying that they'd been bitten or blood had been drunk or anything but the reason it was more of a psychic vampire, because people feel when he looks at them, they feel his intense gaze and they find it hard to look away and hard to actually capture their own thoughts.
Interesting.
They just feel weaker and weaker.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's like an archetypal psychic vampire. This figure looks at them and they find it hard to move away, to be in control of their own thoughts, and to really to have any form of control. They just seem to be literally mesmerized.
What do they call him?
He's just known as the Highgate vampire.
Is he? So he would be a supernatural figure.
Yeah, very much so. And it's said that, but he's also knocked people over. It's certainly a malicious force. There's been a report, there was a student going down there, I think, around this time, an old lady was knocked over, a student was knocked over, a nurse was knocked over. People reported. And these aren't the people who are off their heads who've just come from a party in the centre of town and going up there. These are people that are coming and going from work. It was a middle-aged to elderly lady who was walking her dog. These are just random local residents who are reporting this figure comes up and knocks them over or has scratched them, etc. So he was often seen within the cemetery looking out.
Really?
But he was also seen in the roads which cut through the cemetery. Now, these roads are quite overgrown because the trees from the cemetery grow over these high walls.
So creepy.
It's very, very creepy area.
It would be very creepy to see a tall, dark, supernatural something staring at you. Does he have a human face or a skull face?
Human, but the eyes are always described as piercing, and others have described the eyes as being red.
God! Are you serious?
So it's this red aspect to the eyes which gives the idea of the vampire.
Yes, of course it would. And it is perfect for Highgate. So is it still, what is the latest sighting? Is there anything still going on? Do people go looking for him? Do they go hunting him?
Well, they can't go like they used to. There were several high-profile vampire hunts and exorcisms in the early 70s.
Were they trying to get rid of him?
Yes. And there was a funny aspect, I'm not quite sure of the year, but I do remember the visuals of this, when a lot of locals basically stormed the graveyard one day.
Like with pitchforks and flaming hay?
They were literally taking garlic, crosses, and stakes.
Really?
And it was like, this is 1970 in the heart of London. And they
interesting.
stormed the graveyard and they were just searching for this thing. The police tried to stop them, but there were too many. It
Really?
it was literally like it was a modern mob of villagers
Angry
looking for the
mob.
monster.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that's something which happened around 1970.
Well,
so,
the fear would be the same. It's their neighborhood. It's been going on for a while. It's something they want to
Exactly.
cleanse. So they're upset. They want to get rid of it the only way they know how, which would be traditional old folk
what they
things.
see in the movies too.
Yes.
It's having some control of something which they can't control and they're frightened of.
Which is the cause of most of our
And there was
suffering,
there is one. No, I can't remember his name, but if you Google it, there is one person who's been researched. He was a psychic investigator and very involved from the very early days of this sighting, and saw the thing, the apparition himself in 1969. Now he's been researching and speaking about this ever since.
Really?
He's still involved. Now I don't believe there have been any sightings recently, but it does seem to have, the epicenter seems to be between the number of black masses which were discovered post and before people went to cleanse and exercise.
So somewhere around that time was the height of this activity.
Yes, we're talking 96, about 1971.
Interesting. Well, those black masses, there's energy there. They always warn you, don't even think about playing with it, because you don't realize how powerful you are when you open a door. And when you do that because for personal gain, like some people do that, they just want to know information and they think that it's harmless, can be very, 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 very dangerous.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine what you'd open. You'd open the doors or open the gates.
To something.
Yeah.
That brings us into the whole
Yes.
sphere of burial grounds.
I have a local cemetery little ghost story that was submitted by Pixie Lou, one of our
That will be good, then.
viewers. She's in Dartmouth.
Dartmouth, yeah.
Would you like to hear Pixie Lou's story?
Yes,
And then
please,
we'll go
let's
into
hear
yours?
Pixie's.
Okay. This is Pixie is a new viewer online, and we appreciate these submissions. Please.
Yes, thank you, Pixie.
Yes, we've been asking for you to submit them, and they are coming in audio file, written, and so I can read them. They're coming in all kinds of ways. Thank you. You are a heartbeat of this show, and we could not do this without you. So Pixie lives in Dartmouth, husband.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's a 2 minutes walk from Longcross Cemetery. Do you know where that is?
I'd know where it was by sight. Is it the one at the top of the hill, I think?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think it might be the one at the top of the hill.
She says, a few months ago, one late evening, she cut through the cemeteries with her two dogs, Neville and Bo. She writes, halfway into the walk, I heard the sound of bells ringing. Not big church bells, but the sound of small bells. Neville started barking at the sound, and then Bo started barking too. The bells were still ringing. I headed for the gate because I'd become a little scared at this point, thinking that why would any bells be ringing at this time of the night? I could still hear the bell ringing in the distance, getting quieter as we walked away. That night I phoned my mom to tell her what had happened, and she told me in the past that in that cemetery, bells were used back in the day to alert to those who had been buried alive. And she said I was very, very frightened because that was exactly the sound that I had heard. Isn't that creepy?
Strange.
Yes.
That is really a creepy one, because what it relates to.
Yes, of somebody being buried alive.
Being buried alive, and that energy just being recorded.
And the emotion of the fear.
The fear just being embedded in the ground.
Well, we've always heard of the story, Saved by the Bell, but actually, which graveyards were they used in?
Oh, lots.
Lots. So this would to be, because people were, was it cholera that you said last week that caused the symptoms?
There were a number, particularly cholera, because it puts you into immobile comatose state. I mean, I'm not a medical expert here, but I think it lowers both breathing rates dramatically and heart rates. So it's easy to miss the fundamental signs of life.
Just get rid of them, bury them, and go.
Yeah, people did bury people quickly. There were complex ones where the bell was on the surface, but often the bell used to be in the coffin.
Dear God.
Which was great, because you'd just sit there, you'd lie there ringing it, but no one would hear you 6 foot under.
Oh, that's horrible. What a horrible, horrible thing.
It was very popular. And if you remember last week, I mentioned that the graveyard in Nottingham had been, part of it had been moved because of a road.
Yes.
New roadworks going through, and that was saying the high number of scratch marks on coffin lids from that period.
Yes.
And it did relate to cholera. It's one of those Victorian diseases, at least I think it is cholera, but there are several illnesses which actually can produce that kind of difficult to read life.
It's a very real thing, very real possible outcome of being buried alive, which is a huge fear, which is up there with being burned alive for humanity. The claustrophobia and the helplessness of having 6 feet of earth above you, and absolutely no way to move.
No one hear you scream from there.
Can you imagine what that
would...
If
they did, they just run off?
Yes, they would if they heard screaming.
If you hear screaming coming out of a grave, what would you do?
Well, you wouldn't dig it up, would you? Well, I think hopefully you would. Ethically, you should.
You might get somebody else to dig it up for you.
Excuse me. Yeah, you need a little help. But can you imagine hearing the echo of those bells, what that must have been like? Thank you, Pixie, for that story. That was lovely. Thank you for your submission. She's got a few. She's local and she's a viewer and a listener.
Yes, so we'd like to hear them.
Yes,
please.
And I do have a couple more audible ones, but I'd like for you to carry on with your ghost stories from the cemeteries, which is our theme today. We're going to be talking about, you told us, graveyards are close to the church. Cemeteries are the consecrated ground that's outside the area. So they're two different things.
Yes, and one is run by the local authority or equivalent to the state or what have you, and the other is run by the church. So they're different. One is very different to the other. Several places where I've been and found really spooky. I mean, one of them is certainly Greyfriars.
Oh God.
Graveyard in Edinburgh. Now that's got a really very, very nasty reputation.
It does, and there's things online about it too. Again, that's Greyfriars in Scotland, right?
Yeah, in Edinburgh. It's in Old Town. It's quite close to the castle. One of those aspects which are often said about is it used to be a valley and now it's a mound or a small hill.
Oh God.
Because there's so many bodies.
Oh God.
And I know if there's heavy rain there, it can wash quite a lot of bones to the surface because there's so many. Yeah. But that happens in a lot of burial grounds. If you have 1,000 years or plus 1,000 years and there's a lot of burials every day, you start doing the mathematics on how many bones.
The soil erodes and it is just an equation.
It's just a heap of bones. It's a very, very spooky place. The legends which have been popular, the urban legends or the stories, maybe I shouldn't say urban legends because there's quite a lot of documented evidence on this one. So I wouldn't say it's an urban legend, but the current interest in the site goes back to 1998. And I went before 98, but I just found it a very, very strange atmosphere. But I didn't know the history of the site. I just thought, this feels strange because graveyards are slightly creepy because it's in our head. But personally, I don't think graveyards are haunted because there are bodies there. I feel that graveyards have an energy because of the sadness of the people that go to mourn.
Absolutely, the loss.
Yeah,
and the grieving.
Is just a body,
very powerful.
But those people go. They're very sad. They go to mourn. They return, and they're always in a. Most people who go for a reason to a graveyard, they're actually.
It's not a happy occasion.
It's not a happy place. It wasn't that feeling, but there was a very, very ominous, threatening feeling to this graveyard. And I only knew about Greyfriars Bobby, the little terrier. There's a little statue. The story of the little dog. It's a really sad little story, but very sweet. There's a little statue of him. Okay. And if people are interested, they can Google Greyfriars Bobby and they get that.
And so that's why you went to the graveyard?
Well, I kind of interested because it was part of historic Edinburgh, and I was just, I'd come out the castle and was looking at that part of the city.
Did you know it was haunted? Did you know it had that ominous darkness? Or
no,
did you feel that
I
when
just
you went
knew I knew it was an interesting graveyard. I knew it had important, like, Scottish graves, and that's why I was going. And I knew the story of Greyfriars Bobby, and I went in. But I kind of walked in and walked out. I didn't feel comfortable. It felt very ominous and difficult.
Okay, those are two good adjectives, but I'd like for you to explain to me the physical sensations that you felt that gave you the warning to your brain that it felt. What did you feel, like you couldn't breathe?
No,
did you
it was
feel
nothing so dramatic. It just felt cold, clammy, difficult, uncomfortable. Like I just wanted to get out of there. I'm not enjoying being in this space. I want to walk out of it.
Good.
Nothing particularly dramatic. I just thought I'm not enjoying being in this space.
I understand.
Now, what I didn't know at that point, I will get onto the story at a moment, because what I'm about to say will interweave with the story. Under the reign of King Charles I, the Scottish Covenanters, who were early nonconformists, were oppressed by Charles I. Now, Charles I decided to oppress people's beliefs. His father, James, and he thought they could tell everyone what they would believe.
It's a common theme.
And it read to things like the Pilgrim Fathers and aspects like this.
I don't blame him. Well, never mind.
And then Charles decided to become more extreme and to be more oppressive and tyrannical in saying what people should or shouldn't believe. And it seemed to be more pronounced in Scotland. His father was also King of Scotland. They were a Scottish family, and he saw Scotland as like his birthright, even though he's King of England and Scotland. His father had been King of Scotland. So I think he came down harder on the Scots because he felt like he was King of England and Scotland, but was living in London. So he wanted to make sure where he came from was kept tight.
Don't forget
hold.
who's in charge.
Yeah, I'm still your king, even though I'm now living in London.
Gross.
So the Covenanters were nonconformists, and he came down, basically started to just wipe them out. He'd said there was 18,000 Covenanters killed by Charles I.
That doesn't surprise me.
And it was really, really bloody. He would kill them outside the churchyard, where he wouldn't. There was a guy called George Mackenzie, or Bloody George Mackenzie, and George Mackenzie was basically put them into the graveyards, and it was basically maybe the first concentration camp.
What is their crime?
They just believed differently to the king.
I know, but how did they go get them? Did they say?
Well, they just said we're Covenanters. People knew. They didn't like.
So therefore, you're not doing what I say. So
yeah, exactly.
Go.
And so Charles I started to execute Covenanters.
He kept them in the graveyard.
He kept them in the graveyard, and they were then executed outside, but buried in the graveyard.
There's a lot of suffering, a lot of imprint there.
And at night they had to like crouch, and if they stood up, they'd have snipers and they'd shoot at them. They weren't even allowed to stand up. So it was just like, it literally was like an early concentration camp. And this led to war and the English Civil War. And in the end, because of this, Charles was tried as a tyrant and a traitor to his own people and executed.
Understandably so.
So the king actually, this led to the death of the king. In the end, it led to war, and he was executed.
I wish we could learn from that lesson. It still continues. Believe what I say, otherwise I will kill you.
Yes, yes, it's a bit like
everything.
Hitler. At the end of the day, it came up and it got him. So we have Charles I, who has this guy called George Mackenzie persecuting the Covenanters in Scotland, particularly in Edinburgh. And they're being held in this graveyard. George Mackenzie is reveling in this. And he is buried in the same, a bit like Himmler being buried in Auschwitz. It's like he's buried surrounded by
unfinished
his
business.
Victims. Exactly. And he had this grand tomb, which is kind of a grand mausoleum, which is still there. Fast forward to 1998. George Mackenzie's been buried there.
Yeah.
He's had a reputation, but nothing particular that's been happening, to the best of my knowledge. It's had a bad reputation because people have a folk memory. They have that memory of what happened historically. It's a very wet night in 1998, and there's a vagrant who's trying to find shelter. Now, I can't remember if also this vagrant was potentially also hiding from the police for some reason. I can't remember that aspect. It might have been a dual reason as weather and hiding out. I think it was just weather though. And he broke into the tomb through the front door, the mausoleum of bloody George McGregor.
Because it was probably one of the nicest one, big.
Yeah, because it was like a room.
Yes.
And he got like a candle or a cigarette lighter, and he was able to, he saw there was a grill on the floor and lifted it, and he saw there were steps going down.
Oh my God.
Into where George Mackenzie's body was. So he got into that aspect.
Because it was warm, or he was curious?
Well, it was just a place to hang, just to be. I mean, he was very brave by doing this.
He was alone in the
graveyard.
graveyard
So he
at
goes down
night.
the steps into the inner, lower mausoleum.
Yes.
Before it gets really gruesome. The wooden floor where George Mackenzie's tomb is. And unbeknown to him, or I think anybody, the wooden floor collapsed because nobody had been on that for a very long time.
The weight and the wood would have rotted.
Underneath him was a death pit.
Oh my God.
Of, so I would say, unprepared bodies. They hadn't been like, it hadn't been like lime had been put on the side of them.
I understand.
So he just fell into a heap of bodies, of skulls, of body liquor, decomposing matter.
Oh, for God's sake.
And he absolutely, of course, freaked out. However, since that night, all hell broke loose.
Literally. By him disturbing that, what happened?
Yeah, and within days, there were reports of people being attacked.
Attacked?
Punched, scratched, burn marks. Not the whole of the burial ground, just the Covenanters section where he's buried. Now, this was being picked up, and they started a particular tour because word soon got around, so it became part of the Edinburgh, by about 2000 or something, the Edinburgh tourist industry picked up on this and gave for the ghost tour. But it wasn't like the average ghost tour because there were so many reports, and you can go online and see this. These are ordinary people. They're not freaky out there people. They're just ordinary people that were just, we're just going to have a look at this. We're on a tour.
Why not?
Yeah,
we're in
Edinburgh. Go and have a look. And people report there's lots of fainting, whole groups feeling the temperature drop, and then one of them would pass out and they would wake up. And often, sometimes the next day, they would wake up with marks on them.
That's interesting. When
really
it crosses over from just visual to a physical
so very, very negative. It was exorcised by a priest, and he died. He said he had great difficulty in the exorcism. He had done exorcisms before, and he did the usual aspects of the exorcism, but it was very, very difficult.
Very
strong. And it didn't make any difference, but he did die within several weeks. And his son, who's also a priest, because it's not...
Yeah, I understand. I just had to do the math there for a second.
Yeah, it's because it's Scotland and England. It's not Roman Catholic. So
really quick, for those of you who don't know why, I just made a face because in my mind, the Catholic priests, as I grew up, would not be having children that we know of. I'm sure that they have. But this was... It's a different mindset.
It's Protestant, so you could be a priest.
So you marry, and there's women.
You could be a lesbian married to another woman and still be a priest.
Which is great.
But it's a different tradition. But he's still a priest, and he did the exorcism, but he died. And I believe his son went back several years ago to actually continue the exorcism, and it hasn't been open. I believe it is now permanently locked. The city of Edinburgh will not let anyone into that
in
space.
Greyfriars or the tomb?
The Covenanters section of
I see that because it's so badly haunted.
It's a semi-section, but it is actually off limits and it's completely locked. Wow. And that's by order of the city council. Still,
to this day?
It is now going to be permanently locked. I don't think there are no, as far as I know, I mean, I could be wrong here. There are no plans to open that again.
It's a brilliant story. I love that story. Even though it creeps me out, it's still so powerful that obviously the city is choosing not to.
Oh, yeah. Health and safety. It's not safe.
Really? Yeah. When it came up on something the other day, you did say, I'm not going there. I don't like that place.
Yeah, there were certain places I've been and I've just thought, I don't know. The only place I completely bottled out even before I got there, I got too scared, were the Paris catacombs. But I think that's probably a story for another day, maybe something a little closer to Halloween.
Yes, because this is a huge month for ghost stories. This is massive. Of course, we do it all year round. We do
Halloween-ize.
Facts and folklore and ghost stories and anything, the supernatural and the otherworldly. There's a lot of folks out there doing stuff like this. This is a huge month. You can't get a bigger month than October. So the Paris catacombs, catacombs, am I saying them right? Catacombs. Yeah. Can you give a short little bit, tell us, are they made of bodies? Or are they just many bodies?
I mean, there are places like the Ossuary of Kutna in the Czech Republic, which is a really creepy place.
Yes.
And when you come out, you're covered in bone dust, but that's another story again.
Good Lord.
The catacombs it's said to be, there are more miles of catacombs under central Paris or under Paris itself from our streets.
Jeez.
And
Really?
they're on up to 7 layers deep. So they have no complete plans of them. They are completely off the scale. They've been mining and digging there for thousands of years.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So,
all that
one
human
person
history.
got lost and his body was found 11 years later by chance.
Gross.
Other bodies were undoubtedly still down there, could have been lost for centuries.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Well, we will do that again.
Yeah.
We want to get to some of our listeners submitted ghost stories. Now, this is our first episode, husband, that we're actually having the audio come in. So really quick, for those of you that are listening, we want to encourage you to please do the same. You can contact us at our website, which is storiesfromthestandingroom.com. You can email us your audio. It's super easy. You've done it on your phone, husband, right?
Yeah.
You go to the little recording thing that comes with most smartphones.
I've sent you things. I don't know the technical name, but I know I
you just push
play.
it. It's just a recorder, and then you push it, and then you record, and then it has a little option to send, just like you would a photo. Then it sends it to us as an MP4, which I can manipulate. And we have one from our listener, Craig Rourke, has submitted a story about his son, Austin, who passed. So are you ready?
Yep.
My fiancée, Alana, would get these feelings of when our son was around. The very first time I seen him, I was staying the night with her, and I was sitting on the bed. The room was dark except for the light from the TV. Out of the corner of my eye, this baby crawls to the end of the bed and turns his head and looks at me. I realized that was Austin. The rest of the night, he was playing peekaboo with me. It was pretty awesome. My fiance told me that Austin would talk to her because I'd ask him a question. He would tell Alana to tell me the answer. My son Austin is kind of a prankster. He's always hiding things I'm using. The main thing is a teddy bear Alana gave me for Valentine's Day. One day the bear was at the head of my bed. I had went to the front door to let Alana in, and as we walked in the room, she asked where my bear was. I told her at the head of my bed. She said, no, it isn't. We both looked around and noticed it was on a shelf on the other side of the room. Another incident, I was watching UFC and one of my small flashlights dropped straight down on top of my foot. Now my flashlights were across the room from me. After that, I heard a little kid laughing. Like if I turn the video cameras on my phone for the house, you can see Austin and Ogre out in the backyard, or you'll see him sitting in a chair, or you'll see him walking around outside of the house. I feel protected. I feel secure when they're there. Like I said, they're always there. And this has been going on for as many years as I can possibly remember. Anyways, if there's anything else you need, Ann, just let me know and I'll do whatever I can. Oh, also the picture of my son's handprint. Yeah, that's a different story altogether.
That's a fascinating story, and it really is that aspect we talked about a couple of times in shows, which is a child-parent link, that love bond.
Yes, that the little one is still with him. Could it be the sorrow of many parents that long to see? But Craig gets to have this presence with him. His little boy is leaving. He mentions the handprints at the end.
Yeah, that's a fascinating idea, the handprint. And sometimes
on the mirror.
can be common.
Yeah.
Glass picking up handprint and then that disappearing.
Tiny
it's a very
little
ephemeral
handprints.
thing too that doesn't last for long unless you take a photograph.
It's kind of like, this is only for you. And with digital technology, Craig has taken pictures. Other people have sent us things. We are not experts. We don't know. We're just exploring this possibility and this world with you. And in your stories. Thank you, Craig, for that submission. He also mentions a friend who had passed, and he sees those spirits, his nickname was Ogre, together, and he sees actually them looking after one another. Is this a comforting message just for Craig? Could it be that way if it was, because other people have lost children, and I don't know if they have that kind of activity, which is so very strong.
Maybe Craig is just sensitive.
Perhaps. Yes.
And he's just able, something about the energy and the dynamic, or maybe it's just felt by the universal mechanisms that he needs that link.
Yes, because the loss of a child is absolutely something that is huge. I can't even, to outlive your child is the greatest fear. That impact, that emotion would be unimaginable.
I think also if you're demanding or needing it, it's not going to happen, because Craig is able to literally play. So I think if you're desperate to have that link, it's probably not going to happen.
That's an
But
interesting
I think
point.
the fact he's relaxed to it and it's not a big deal
Yes.
might be one of the aspects which allow it.
It actually might be helpful, though, for people who are listening, who are like, anything to be able to hear from my child again, anything. And I certainly can understand that. Some of them going to mediums, some of them doing anything for some contact. Let me know that you made it. They're okay.
Yeah, well,
But-
actually they moved on and they're doing what they do.
Who knows? What do we don't have any idea.
no.
But for Craig to have this this communication with Austin, still as a child, as he left this physical world, playing and letting him know that he's not gone, maybe that he has not ended.
Exactly. And there's also, I mean, there's all the stuff we don't know. There's the nature of occurrence and of energy and time not being linear. You existing in a dimension actually is the same dimension but over different time.
Yeah.
All kinds of things we could never even get our heads around.
Yep. And there are some people that even mention, past, present, future all taking place
Exactly,
at the
all in
exact
the
same
same
time.
place.
So
is
it?
That
We don't
Austin
know.
playing with Craig when Austin was still alive?
Yes.
Or, who knows? The complexity we won't be able to know.
Yes, we don't know. All we can do is explore and share. And thank you, Craig, for submitting. He's
Yes,
our very
thank
first
you.
MP4. We have another one that a very sweet young man, Ben, and his brother Harry came to fix our water heater. And while Ben was here, he loved the idea of the stories from the standing room. And he goes, oh, well, and he was interested. And by the end of the time we talked, he goes, I've got one. I go, really? So I whipped out my phone.
Yep.
And I said, would you like to share it? And he was very, very keen. And very, very sweet and honest. So I was able to grab this little clip.
There you go. Let's hear.
So I must have been 4 or 5, and I remember I was just laying in my bed, my single bed in the corner of my room. So yeah, I was in the corner, and I remember I woke up for some reason. But I remember like all of a sudden,
Yes.
like a big, like I was just woken up, and then I remember I just looked over to my wardrobe. And I had a small wardrobe, probably like this big. I was only tiny at the time, and there was a figure stood there, completely naked, white figure, just completely naked, female, long hair to about here, just stood there holding the 2 knobs on my wardrobe. Stood there with the 2 hands on the knobs of the wardrobe.
And then disappeared or faded away?
And then she was there for 5-10 minutes, and then sort of just went away. I was able to get back to sleep.
You just went back to sleep? Yeah. Were you scared or worried? Or
Yeah, I was under the covers.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you go and tell your mom and dad?
I told them probably a couple of days after, but they'd thought nothing of it.
Really?
Obviously, yeah.
And so what did you think at the time? Did you know anything about otherworldly, or did you feel that she just belonged there, or did you feel...
I don't know. It sounds funny, but I feel like... I don't know. I feel like there was a reason she was there.
Yeah?
That's how I feel. I don't know. I couldn't tell you why or anything, but...
Did she look like you and I?
Yeah, she was... Yeah, not translucent. She was there. Like,
Really?
Yeah, there, thick. Like...
Really?
Yeah.
What age was she, do you think, when you saw her?
Well, she literally looked like my mum, so...
She did?
It would have been mid-30s then.
Did you think that your mother was running around naked?
Yeah.
You did?
I did, but it wasn't because I was like, Mum. I remember it so well, but I don't at the same time.
I understand.
Like, the picture is there, but I
know.
couldn't tell you the story or anything as vividly as you know.
Did you put your head under the covers and then you looked and she was gone, or did you see
No,
her go?
I looked at it, head under the covers, trying to get rid of it. Looked at it again, it's still there.
Oh my God!
And I put my head under the covers and sort of just fell asleep then.
Really?
Yeah, but that is a vivid memory. I remember.
understand. Yeah, all your life.
Yeah, and I remember that very well.
Did you tell anybody that night or the next morning? No. You didn't tell anybody the next morning?
Didn't tell anyone.
When did you finally tell your brothers and sisters? Or brothers?
It's only recently, really.
Are you serious?
Well, I remember I definitely told my mum, definitely would have told my mum.
Did she say it wasn't me?
And she was just like, oh, you mad?
She said you're mad, really?
Yeah.
What if she would have said, oh, tell me more? Do you think you would have felt more likely
Yeah,
to
I
say?
just would have been like, yeah, well, there was just like a white figure just stood there, sort of just... It was white, definitely white.
Her skin, or was there a light?
Like the skin, long hair.
Her hair was down.
Yeah, hair was down.
Dark?
Dark hair.
Really?
Yeah, she stood there like that.
Was there any illumination to her, or was she lit up by the window or the light in the room?
A little, yeah, a bit brighter. Yeah.
Did you hear it?
I can picture it now.
I know. I wish I could take a
it.
picture of what's in your mind. I can see you see it now. How far away was she from you?
Well, I was laying in my bed in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Must have been to there, that wall there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that distance across my old room.
Did you say anything?
I don't remember saying anything out loud. No,
Really?
in the middle of the night. I was
At
just like,
4, bless your heart.
Yeah,
She's coming to the
absolutely.
wardrobe. Was it your wardrobe?
yeah, my wardrobe.
Had your wardrobe been there previously?
Yes.
Really? That's so interesting. Thank you. So what's your name?
I'm Ben.
That's really interesting. I mean, I'm going to say a number of things about it. And one of the things is, though, it goes back to the thing that we see ghosts in the clothes they wear. And that's how we can date them, too, because you can see a ghost in a certain period wearing certain clothing.
She's naked.
But she's naked. But also, I mean, for a child, that doesn't mean anything. But for an adult, if we started seeing naked ghosts, it'll be really strange. Because you think, oh, is this interesting or is this scary?
You're absolutely right. You're right, because
There'd be
we don't see a lot of naked
there'd
ghosts.
be the collision of do I want to look at the naked ghost or do I want to hide from the naked
It would
ghost?
be very, very weird.
It would be very weird indeed.
Because the thought of ghost clothing has come up as to, you can date the period of the memory. Why are they, and what are is the clothing the same, obviously the same material, but this one, he mentioned she was standing there with no clothes on, that her hair was down. This is a 4-year-old boy. It came to him. You should have seen his face when he was describing it. He's not making this up. This is obviously something happened that he remembered as a 4-year-old. Now, you remember little things. You're like, yeah, I totally remember it happening, but I can't. Is he remembering the memory? But he was able to mention her position at the cupboard, grabbing onto the knobs, which has a different connotation over here in the UK than it does in the States.
It does.
Knobs.
I'm ignoring that though because I'm totally focused on the idea
know.
that in a way, because he's a child and because she's naked and he was 20 and she was 30 and she was naked, it will be a completely different connotation.
He
But
was
he's
not
a
20 when she was naked.
No, but I'm saying if he was, it would be different.
Yes,
oh,
it would.
I saw a naked woman in my room.
Yes.
But I think because he's a child and she's naked, that puts a completely different context
It
into it.
does. It's one of the first times
So
I've ever heard of that.
I suppose it goes back to the recording. People will be recorded some way. It goes back to that stone tape theory. But if it is a recording, if it is some kind of basic recording of a memory or emotion, that was the recording of that woman who just happened to be naked. And we're all naked sometimes, so there are going to be some naked ghosts. But mostly there are events when people are clothed, because most of the time...
Another time that you've heard of a naked ghost? I haven't.
I don't know. I'd have to think about naked ghosts.
I have not. I can't actually. You know what? The whole night, the whole day, I'm going to be thinking about ghosts
Yeah.
that are naked. No, I'm not going to be thinking of them naked, but I mean the fact that we don't hear that many stories of he was walking through the woods and they're usually dressed, and the time period will date them by their clothing, and also when they walk through walls, they're dressed. So this one was
So
naked.
it's more useful for them to be dressed because you go, oh yeah, they were wearing, I don't know, Victorian clothing or whatever.
Right.
But when they're naked, it could be any period. It's much more of a neutral position.
Her hairstyle, you couldn't date by the
the
hairstyle.
hair was down. Could it have been up? Was it always down? Was it pinned up? You couldn't date. That's an undateable spirit, as it were.
Actually, the very first time I've ever heard of that is Ben. Thank you, Ben, for sharing your story. Are you thinking about the naked ghost?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm also
you are.
thinking every time the gas people come now, I'm going to think of the naked ghost.
I don't know if I should sell out poor Ben like that because he shared such an intimate moment.
Well,
but he was a little guy.
true. I mean, it's funny because it's like nakedness. We find nakedness funny, ha ha ha. But what we are actually talking about is a ghost which is completely independent of any specific culture or time or anything.
It's true. Could be any
It
period.
just goes back to the core human form.
She was at his cupboard, which for the States, we don't have closets over here. Very few houses have closets because they're so tiny anyway. Cupboards would be like a wardrobe, what we would call an armoire, something like that. So, yeah, so it would be his cupboard. She was at that and opening that, and that's what he saw. And he went under
I
the
wonder
cupboard.
if there were any other activities in that house.
The cupboard was old, he said. So.
Yeah.
But Ben's story was amazing. Thank you, Craig, for
And
sharing
it
the
could have
memory.
been associated, say could associated to but it could have been associated with the cupboard.
It could have.
Because he does very much relate her being there and close to that. So
Yep.
maybe there was some kind of memory associated to that. And of course, cupboards stroke wardrobes hold clothing. And when you go to get your clothing, you would probably be naked. So if there was a recorded memory to the object, when you get that's one of the times you are going to be naked, when you're getting your clothes to get dressed. So there is, interestingly, the one point when usually you are naked is when you're dressing and the clothes are in that cupboard. So it could be related to the activity of the wardrobe.
A lot of people say beds or mirrors. Like we have an old mirror in the front, which is from 1800 or something. So yeah, that looking into that mirror, the emotions being felt, that they're charged objects. I don't know. I have no idea, but it gives us something to think about. Yeah. And it was really nice to be able to have some audio. So you know what we can do now that we're doing this is not only can you submit your audio by going on your smartphone and recording like Craig did, but also we might come to you.
We may come to you. That'd be scary. And if naked in the middle of the night.
Yes, at your cupboard. Dear God, that would be
that would be really scary.
No other ghost show could ever trump that horror.
So we'd probably create a few ghosts with that horror.
But do you know that also that allows our listeners to then now use their cell phones or their mobile phones?
Yeah, they could do interviews
to grab them.
for us.
Yes,
it doesn't even have to be them.
Yes,
if you've got a friend who has a ghost story, grab your phone, record it, and send it to us.
It
doesn't even have to be you.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be you. So the big thing is on your phone. All smartphones have this. It's a little like I parked in section BD3. That's what they have, that little phone recording part on your mobile phone. Enables you to record your voice, so much so that it's high quality enough that I can doctor it up and stick it in our podcasts. So please, if you know somebody who has a ghost story, if you have a ghost story, any story of the paranormal or the otherworldly or anything outside of what you would call normality, this is the month for them.
This is it. So maybe next time you're in the bar, go around the bar and ask anyone if they've seen a naked ghost.
Yes, naked. We've never had a naked ghost. Ben is the first and only one I've ever heard of. It's true.
Oh, I'm sure it's associated to that wardrobe the more I think about it.
It's interesting. Yeah, you might want to go over there and spend the night at Ben's. See some naked girls.
Yeah, I mean, would people find it?
I don't know. I don't know.
What would happen? Would it be interesting or terrifying or both?
It would be interesting because it isn't a physical. But it would be also because of the primitive physical part of humanity. The lust would probably, I don't know.
Yeah. Can you be lustful to a dead person?
Yes, some people say this, the entities come and have sex with them. That's something that has...
Yeah, but that's entity-based, isn't it? That's not...
Are they naked?
Yeah, but I'm thinking about that. That is much more of a...
Yeah, but okay, those entities that are having sex with those people that are... This is really uncomfortable, horrible stories. Are those people naked? Are those entities in a physical human body or a physical astral body, or what are they in when they're having these carnal relationships that are horrific?
I think the term is entity there and not ghost there.
But is it naked? That's what I want to know.
I don't know.
I don't know either. If you know, let us know. And that wraps it up. See, this was a very good show. I liked this. I know we liked being on camera.
Yeah.
We also
I'm still looking as if there's a camera. I'm staring at the mic like you can see me.
But the fun thing would be we will be able to do specialty shows for you. We will still do stories.
Yeah, we'll still be visible
from that haunted table. We have had issues with that table from the
haunted table.
No, the late 1600s. We've had this table that we do the stories from the standing room live in there. When I have the microphone cords, which are here on my modern desk, which is a desk that you made for me from Home Depot, which is B&Q over here. I am not having the feedback. I'm not having the electronic feedback. When it is on that table, I have a cranking sound. It sounds like somebody's winding a clock.
It's difficult to deal with.
So anyway, we will be doing specialty shows for you. Send in your ghost stories. Send them in. Yep. Send them in via MP3.
Or somebody else's. Just get out with that phone and start recording your ghost stories.
Yes.
Your mother, your neighbours.
Yes.
The dead lady who's naked at the end of the bed.
You just want the naked ladies.
Yeah, well, they can't see.
Well, maybe we think, I don't know. They can send in pictures. Maybe Ben will take a picture. But listen, you can hit us up. Remember Twitter. It's Standing Room HRH. We're over at Twitter. You can join us on YouTube at Stories from the Standing Room. We're at Facebook.com/Stories from the Standing Room. We're also on SoundCloud at Stories from the Standing Room. And often we do the Facebook Live over at Facebook.com/Ann Kelly. But this week we are going to upload the polished episode because of our audio is being submitted. So we have some fantastic ghost stories for you next week. I do. What's your face like that for?
Because I haven't thought of next week. I'm trying to think.
What the hell?
You're not going to ask me what next week is because I haven't got a clue.
I do.
Oh, good.
Hang on. Okay. Hang on. Let me find it here.
We have got those other ones, but maybe I think we should save those for Halloween. And also, we can have the Christchurch, Barbados moving coffins in Halloween too.
Ooh. That sounds scary.
That's quite interesting because it was very well documented. So that's something
Good.
which we could actually add to the creepy, gruesome, flesh-crawling Halloween.
God, we want to thank, we've had a couple more submissions that are going to beef up next week's show.
Yeah.
One of them is on the, you know how we're talking about the big black dogs and the werewolves and all that kind of stuff?
The yes hunts.
This is the Native American version called the honkas.
Okay.
Honkas, which is meaning the long-eared ones.
Yeah.
And this is a very scary story from Susie. So that's going to be next week's show. If you have a story, please send it in and know that we love you very much. Thank you for being with us on episode 15. High five, husband. You did a great job.
Thank
very
you,
good. And
see you next week.